Hello and welcome to Pluribus Unum's Fireside Chats. Not as good as FDR's, but hey, it's something. The 400th episode. This was a moment that was building for a long time. Literally, because it's the 400th episode. And hopefully I picked a subject that is worthy of 400th episode attitude. If you remember from last video, I was sick and I still am kinda a little bit sick, but I'm a lot better now. Like, really, it was, like, that episode, last episode was, it was really bad, and like, the immediate aftermath of that episode, it was also really, really bad. But again, better now, so not much else for me to say, but let's get right into the news. First news story is coming from Peru. Peru decided to do one more funny haha before their election. So, if you don't know the history of Peru, Peru has been having a little bit of a problem maintaining a president of the country. First came 2016 when they held a presidential election, where a man by the name of Pedro Pablo Kuczynski managed to win in the election. He was elected president in July of 2016, but there was one massive problem with him, and it was the fact that he was not a Fujimorist, or like a right-wing, like a fascist person in, like, basically the dominant right-wing faction of Peru are people who idealize the Fujimori political family, Alberto Fujimori, the former dictator, and the heir to that dictator, Keiko Fujimori. And they made it very abundantly clear that they were not going to work with Pedro. So what ended up happening was that Pedro Pablo Kuczynski decided to resign from the presidency because he felt that there was really no other option left for him to really run the country. Then, in March of 2018, his vice president, Martin Vizcarra, became the president. But basically, similar things happened, and the right-wing government of Peru started trying to launch an impeachment inquiry against him, ultimately succeeding in 2020. And the situation with the country was getting so bad that Vizcarra already knew that the best course of action was probably to launch a snap election to pick a new president. However, they picked a new president, Manuel Merino, in November of 2020, but then 5 days later, he would end up resigning from the job because he also knew that he was not going to have the ability to work with the Fujimori people in Congress. And then, 3 days later, a new person named Francisco Sagasti, a person of a political party called the Purple Party, still like a broad centrist. Most of these guys were at least somewhat, they leaned a little bit to the right, but they're somewhat they're more liberal center-right people. But then what ended up happening was basically they decided, he was we gotta pick a new, we have to do it. We need a new election. There is just no way we can move forward with this stupid bullshit anymore. And what ended up happening was the massive upset of Pedro Castillo winning the presidential election. Him, of course, being elected under the Free Peru party, which is Peru Libre, which is a socially conservative, but pretty left-wing economically. It's basically a conservative leftist party. And then almost immediately, the same thing happened. The right-wing, members of the Fujimorist bloc were antagonistic to Castillo, even as Castillo started shifting rightwards to accommodate them. And it ultimately culminated with Castillo trying to launch a self-coup of his own administration. Basically, trying to claim, the Fujimorists are, they're, shady, they're, trying to dismantle the government, that kind of stuff, because they kept trying to impeach him. And then his vice president, Dina Boluarte, was chosen to succeed him, but very quickly, despite the fact that she also was trying to shift rightward to accommodate them, the Fujimorists were mad and impeached her. So now, they launched a new, they picked a new guy. The next person in succession was a guy called Jose Heri, who was just a general, conservative type guy. But then on February 17th of this year, he was censured by the Peruvian Congress. And now, due to the next line of succession, the new president is a man by the name of Jose Maria Balcazar. So, in literally 10 years, they have had 8 presidents. And this is a very interesting development because, one, Jose Maria Balcazar is a member of Peru Libre, which is a very strange thing. They literally just loop back around to get a left-wing president once more. But what's even more interesting is the fact that this particular guy is well known for defending child marriage, being literally the only member of the Peruvian Congress to vote against a bill that would ban child marriage, explicitly arguing that he believes that teachers and students can have relationships without any problems. So if you want to be that kind of guy, you can make a joke about how they elected Vosh to be their president. But haha, funny joke, to memify it for the normies who don't understand Peruvian politics. And I'm just waiting for the moment where this is finally over. At this point, hopefully, when the election finally comes, it will probably be over. Except the big problem is, the only way that this can be over is if Fujimori wins. The right-wing people are just going to keep doing this until Fujimori wins. And without giving too much away for when I inevitably do the Peru episode, it does seem like that's the most likely outcome for the time being. Speaking of most likely outcomes for the time being, South Korea decided to do something very interesting and actually punish their leaders who try to do bad things, with ex-President Yoon Suk-yeol being found guilty of masterminding an insurrection and being sentenced to life in prison. And apparently, he's not done with his sentencing, because there are apparently 2 more trials related to it. You see, apparently he was already in prison for the declaration of martial law that he did. He was already punished for that. This is specifically dealing with the insurrection part of his sentencing. Apparently they have 2 more sentences that they're looking at. One of them involves them trying to figure out if he had a backroom political deal, which is just generic political corruption, and another one has to do with the drone deployments to North Korea that happened in October 2005. Because if you know the story of what happened in South Korea, was basically Yoon Suk-yeol was trying to instigate a war with North Korea in order to make it so that his martial law declaration would be legitimate. He was intentionally trying to provoke North Korea into attacking the South so that they would actually so that that way he could again legitimize all of it. Basically all the people who are criticizing my decisions, you're just North Korean puppets and we have to arrest you. And now there are a lot of people who are, of course, doing the meme where they're just see, this is what you're supposed to do. And yeah, literally, in almost every single sense, this is what you're supposed to do when a person tries to overthrow the government and try to initiate a coup of their own nation. And you're supposed to sentence them. You're supposed to give them a criminal trial. Jair Bolsonaro, he can no longer run for president for at least until 2030. Yoon Suk-yeol was almost put to death. This is a lenient sentence. They were trying to give him the death penalty for this action. And a lot of people, of course, they're just taking a look at that and just being America, take notes. But it's yeah, but we also have to understand, America needs to take notes about it more than just that. We don't have to just take notes in the sense of, waiting for the system to figure it out. Because, as we all know, the system can clearly not work. The system that was supposed to stop this thing from happening again allowed it to happen again in the United States. Much in the same way, the systems that were supposed to stop this kind of authoritarianism from happening in the past also didn't work. Fascists love abusing the system for its gain. People don't understand. People like to say, people like to make jokes about, voting stops fascism, haha. But it's that kind of does happen to an extent. If you if you allow the fascists to get into power, like, fascists love the ability to take the power, like, they love the ability to take liberal democracy and defeat it through its own means, then they make it so that the system can no longer fix it. That's why after these authoritarian right-wing people get into power, they almost immediately try to erode the very same democratic systems that they used to get in. Like Jair Bolsonaro, he loved the military dictatorship, but he didn't launch a coup first. He launched a presidential campaign first. Yoon Yeol didn't try to overtake the country first. He won an election and then tried to declare martial law. Hitler started by trying to win the most seats in an election. Mussolini won an election before he took over parliament. And let's take a look at why some of these nations fell. Because of a failure of an opposition, the people who were supposed to stop fascism, who were supposed to hate fascism and love liberty more than anything else, were too busy in every single other aspect, whether it be arguing amongst themselves or allowing themselves to become so limp-dick and just being like, oh, the system will fix itself, that there's no need to fight. Or allowing themselves to simply be scared into submission. Like, literally, in Germany, the German communists and the German social democrats were too busy fighting over amongst themselves to be worried about the fact that Hitler was literally slowly encroaching power and taking over the country. The Italian opposition could have stopped Mussolini, but Mussolini scared them into submission by saying, oh, if you do anything about it, the black shirts are going after you next, because he literally just killed another opposition figure. Meanwhile, when the time came for them to try and take over Brazil, nothing happened. Because Lula wasn't scared. Lula was prepared. Lula was like, if this is it, I'm going. And since he wasn't scared, he didn't bend the knee. It doesn't even have to be from a socialist. Like, literally, in Korea, their opposition party is the Democratic Party, which is a broadly just social liberal party. But Lee Jae-myung wasn't scared. He wasn't scared. He didn't bend the knee. He literally almost died of an assassination attempt prior. Yoon Yeol was literally saying that he wanted Lee Jae-myung arrested, but Lee Jae-myung literally live-streamed himself going to the Chamber of Deputies and saying, yo, I'm not scared. I'm going to save the country. And that's the ultimate truth. We need to know if push comes to shove, are there people who will stand up? That's the truth. Like, it doesn't matter if they're, like, a liberal or a socialist or a communist or whatever. Granted, the latter two would probably be more likely to oppose the fascists in a sense, but sometimes they're not. Ernst Thälmann literally said, don't let a few fascist bushes scare you from the entire forest of social democrats. He was more scared of the German social democrats than he was scared of Hitler. That's the phrase that he also said, first Hitler, then us. And that's the question we gotta think. And that's the question we gotta understand, especially when it comes to elected officials. Like, I mean, guys, we gotta be real. Like, yes, electing a certain elected official might not necessarily 100% save us from fascism, but let's think about it in this sense. Let's say a situation arises where, there's a way to defeat Trump. Like, there's a way in the legislative system. Like, finally, enough positions are there. So hypothetically, you could exert the 25th Amendment, or you could exert an impeachment trial, or blah 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 blah. Or in a more dire situation, like what if Trump declares martial law? Do we have elected officials that we think would actually say, no, we are not going to do this, and we're gonna impeach him, we're gonna get rid of him? Like, we're just going to not listen to him. Or elected officials that will say, like, hey, in order to protest this administration doing this action, let's launch a general strike. That kind of stuff. Like, you have to take that into consideration on every aspect of it. Anyways, let's just move on to the next story, which is also related to this administration. Prince Andrew is arrested following the Epstein file revelations. So, the title pretty much says it all. Prince Andrew, who was well known for being an associate with Jeffrey Epstein, is arrested. And similar to the last story, every single person is really kind of figuring out just the very basic thing of, like, the rest of the world functions way better than us. Because literally almost every single other fucking world nation has done something related to the Epstein files revelations in every single world. Like, literally. Like UK, I think Denmark had to, like, do something to one of their royal family members. And in America, there have been some repercussions in regards to the Epstein files, but all of them have been done by private matters. Like, I remember while exercising, the, like, news was on the TV or something, and I saw it was, like, a university person in North Carolina resigned because they had ties to the Epstein files. Yet, sure enough, Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, apparently, literally millions of times. Apparently, that's real, that he is in the Epstein files, like, 5 million times, I think, or 3. I forget the exact number, but, like, literally, I saw, like, it was, like, a massive number, and then someone was like, no, this is, like, actually real. He's in the files this many times. And conservatives are very desperate to try and cling on to any sort of, like, I don't understand how it's literally just, like, they're literally just, like, trying their in the most desperate vein to try and pretend that, oh, no, you see, like, because, like, one of the things that I just kept seeing pop up was, like, you know, it's like, Trump was in the files. Oh, he was in the files because he called the cops on Epstein. It's like, no, like, what? Like, there's, like, again, like, the fact that he is very much implicated in a lot of the shady stuff that Jeffrey Epstein did. You don't get a prize for having a conscience in the last 2 seconds. Like, literally, in almost every, like, in the official narrative of the Epstein-Trump relationship, it literally just seems like they just got a little too close to home, and Epstein touched the wrong girl for Trump. Like, Trump was fine when they touched all the other girls, but when they touched a specific girl, it's like, no, that's a bridge too far. But even then, it's just, like, very much obviously not true, because then we get, like, Jamie Raskin being like, hey, I literally read this unredacted Epstein file that literally says that Donald Trump completely fucking lied and never told Epstein to never leave. Much in the same way, he said that he had never been in contact with Jeffrey Epstein ever since the first arrest, but meanwhile, everyone else in the circle literally says, oh yeah, Donald Trump called him literally the day he won the 2016 election, and then literally tried to appoint the lawyer who got Jeffrey Epstein off. Like, shock of all shocks, he's just an absolute fucking liar. And it's weird because it's like with the release of the documents, it's just like, this is just insane. Like, it's just insane that this whole thing is going on, and it's just like, that this is just, like, America is just so weird. It's like, everybody else is just accepting, like, yeah, this is just normal, apparently. And everyone's still falling for the lie. I mean, it's like, the Epstein files literally reveal that 4chan and QAnon and that kind of stuff were literally ops made by Jeffrey Epstein. And meanwhile, people are saying, like, oh, Pizzagate and QAnon were proven right. It's like, no, they weren't proven right. You're literally falling for the same shit again. And it's a thing. It's like, because, like, literally, it's just like, one thing I just want to say this before we go on to the next topic, because this is just one thing I really want to say. Like, no, QAnon was not proven right. No, Pizzagate was not proven right. And we got to say one thing, because, like, this is the big thing that I really want to say. Everyone, stop doing this. If you, like, all of you watching this video who are left-wing or right-wing or whatever, or who want to make a joke about, like, the Epstein files or whatever, or, like, let's just be, we need to say one thing right here and now. No. This is not satanic. Like, I mean, this is the one thing that's been bothering me about all this. This is not satanic, because, like, that's one thing. It's like, oh, well, the Epstein files prove that, like, the world's run by satanic pedophiles. I was like, no, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. No. Donald Trump's not a Satanist. Epstein's not a Satanist. Prince Andrew's not a Satanist. None of these people are Satanists. None of the people who are involved in this conspiracy are Satanists. Not a one. Not a single person who is part of this conspiracy is a Satanist. They are all of the real dominant religions of the current world. Donald Trump held a Bible, and he's part of this conspiracy. It's not Satanism. Satanism are the people who are opposing, like, the people in power are not Satanists. The people in power are Christians. The people in power are Jewish. The people in power are, I guess in some instance, Muslim. Granted, I don't know if there are Muslims in the Epstein files or not. Do you get my point? These are the people who are praying the same God you are. Because the whole purpose of that God is to convince them that them doing all this is okay. But anyways, I guess there's really no point in me going on about that. So let's just move on to the next story. And it's a sad news story, because the last one clearly wasn't sad. Jesse Jackson has passed away. Man, he had to do it in Black History Month, no less. For those of you who may not know about Jesse Jackson is a prominent civil rights leader, was basically kind of seen as like the figurehead of the civil rights movement after MLK died. Kind of. Like, I mean, clearly it wasn't the exact same civil rights movement after MLK died, but, you know, he kind of like continued the legacy of the movement. And very much became a prominent figure in his own right, even to the point where he became a prominent presidential candidate in 1984 and 1988. And due to the fact that he was a, you know, black candidate, he was, of course, seen as like a fringe figure initially when he first ran for office, thinking like, you know, oh, he's just going to come in, say some words, and maybe drop out. And then ended up finishing third in 1984 for the Democratic nomination, and then becoming the runner-up in 1988. With his campaigns kind of being seen as like one of the main reasons why the Democratic Party kind of at least somewhat shifted leftward. Like, I mean, if you look at the tradition of the Democratic Party, you know, there's like, you know, the tradition of like it somewhat like leaning to the left in certain occasions, and like there's sort of like the tradition of that where it's like 1968, you know, you had McCarthy and Kennedy kind of like becoming prominent. In 1972, you had McGovern kind of becoming prevalent, and then in the following elections, you had like, you know, I guess, again, you could label them the fringe left-wing candidates, and Jesse Jackson was that kind of candidate for those years. Like, even to the point where you look at his platform planks, and then you start realizing, like, oh, wait, like, I mean, because that's literally one of the big things. Like, literally, like, I saw, like, a Mr. Beat tweet where he, like, tweeted, like, Jesse Jackson's platform was like, hey, this guy's actually pretty, not that bad. And it's like, literally, just look at the Wikipedia page for his campaign platform and, like, listen to it. He wanted to create a works progress administration style program to rebuild America's infrastructure, reprioritize the war on drugs to focus less on the mandatory minimum sentencing for drug users, and focus more on punishing like money laundering bankers and part of the supply of that, reversing Reaganomics inspired tax cuts and using that to, you know, finance social welfare programs, cut the budget of the Department of Defense, declare apartheid South Africa to be a rogue nation, initiate a nuclear freeze and begin disarmament negotiations with the Soviet Union, reparations to the descendants of slaves, supporting family farmers by reviving FDR's New Deal programs, creating single-payer healthcare, ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment, increasing the federal funding for lower-level public education, including free community college for all, applying a stricter enforcement of the Voting Rights Act, and supporting the formation of a Palestinian state. And one of the big things about his 1984 platform was that he wanted to put all of those things into the Democratic Party's platform. The only one of them that actually managed to make it into the platform that election cycle was the introduction of the, like, South Africa apartheid one, because by that point, the South Africa apartheid issue became prominent enough that the Democrats actually would pay attention to it. And when Jesse Jackson died, one of the things I did is I posted something on our campaigns where I basically said, like, keep this in mind when Jesse Jackson, like, because, like, I knew what was going to happen. All the Democratic politicians were going to start rolling out, like, you know, R.I.P. Jesse Jackson, he's such an icon, such a legend, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, when this happens, pay attention to where they were when Jesse Jackson was prominent. Because this is the thing about Jesse Jackson. And this is the same thing about every single radical politician. Like, I mean, remember, Jesse Jackson in 1984, when he ran that campaign, he was considered a fringe candidate who represented a fringe faction of the Democratic Party that no one cared about. Then, like most of those platform things that he says in that platform, a lot of people nowadays, Democrats, even Republicans, would probably say, hey, this is actually a pretty good idea. But in a time period where Jesse Jackson could have attained political power, he was a threat. He was a radical. He was declared an anti-Semite. He was declared every nasty word in the language. He was bad. He was evil. He was a race baiter. He was blah, 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 blah. When he was again, during those positions, during those times, he was considered a threat. And as such, Democrats didn't like him. But when he was no longer a threat, all of a sudden Democrats started being like, oh yeah, I love Jesse Jackson. They would invite Jesse Jackson, they'd go to their campaign rallies, like, yes, Jesse Jackson is so cool, Jesse Jackson. Even though Jesse Jackson had never really shifted away from his radical actions. I remember during 2019 when he was literally going to the Venezuelan fucking, like, compound, like when he was going to the Venezuelan, like, embassy with, like, a bunch of Green Party people and was giving them food so that they continue their strike against like people like trying to go to war with Venezuela in 2019. Democrats didn't talk about that. They don't talk about the fact that Jesse Jackson was advocating for the release of Mumia Abu-Jamal. They weren't, like, no. They don't care about that. They don't care about that. These guys don't give a shit about Jesse Jackson at all. They did not care. None of these people cared. Because when he was an actual threat, they didn't like him. And the biggest one that I knew, literally, the first thing that happened is that people were starting posting one particular clip. And it was from the 1984 or 1988 Democratic Party platform, where Chuck Schumer was stating how he was proud. He was stating how he was super fucking proud that he defeated Jesse Jackson's plank to push for the advocacy of the Palestinian state in the Democratic Party platform. He was like, I am proud that he did. It's like, he's like, I am proud that I did this, that I defeated the Jackson plank. Making it no secret that he just did not like Jesse Jackson at all. But then, Jesse Jackson's now, like, he is now a figurehead to a lot of people. So now, he's like, oh, Jesse Jackson was such a great fighter, fighting for peace, justice, liberation, blah, blah, blah. I love Jesse Jackson. It's like, no, you don't, Chuck Schumer. You hated Jesse Jackson. Admit it. When he was an actual threat, when he actually had the ability to bring truth to power, you didn't like him. But when he was no longer a threat, that's when you like him. Like literally, like, I mean, I'm gonna do a thing and I'm gonna quote Lenin, because this is a quote. Remember, this is a big quote that's very important. During the lifetime of great revolutionaries, the oppressing classes constantly hounded them, received their theories with the most savage malice, the most furious hatred, and the most unscrupulous campaign of lies and slander. After their death, attempts are made to convert them into harmless icons, to canonize them, so to say, and to hollow their names to a certain extent for the consultation of the oppressed classes, and with the object of duping the latter, while at the same time robbing the revolutionary theory of its substance, blunting its revolutionary edge, and vulgarizing it. And in the era of Black History Month, that is a very important message. Because a lot of Black political figures nowadays really don't understand the roots of their ideology. Like, a lot of Black political thought in this country stems from radical left-wing movements. Because those were usually the organizations that aligned most with African American, like either like in a multitude of different aspects. Like, you know, sometimes African Americans were like, you know, we don't like the way that the world is run right now, so we need to find a political ideology that is vastly different from any of that. And sometimes it comes from the fact, like, literally in just some senses, they're just like, you know, sometimes African Americans just meet up with communists or meet up with leftists, and then you go, yeah, we agree, we understand. And, you know, left-wingers usually, for the most part, advocate for the rights of the oppressed class. And sure enough, African Americans are one of the most oppressed classes in America. So a lot of the black thought in politics comes from the left. W.E.B. Du Bois, Frederick Douglass. Like, literally, like, all the way back to, like, the slave era. Or, like, Reconstruction. Like Harriet Tubman was not just a Republican. Like, they like to do the thing where it's like, oh, well, Harriet Tubman was a Republican. It's like, she wasn't just a Republican. She was, like, a radical Republican. She literally took up arms against the United States government because she thought the way that they were running the system at that point was bad. She was essentially a communist revolutionary. Many of the earliest Black politicians in the United States were radical Republicans. The Black Panther Party, which is nowadays, again, still like, you know, like, people still like the aesthetics of the Black Panther Party. Like, the Black Panther Party, like, you know, they stood up for Black liberation. And it's like, really, is that all they stood for? Is that all they stood for? To quote FD Signifier, there are 8 Black Panther Party movies. Only one of them mentions that they're Marxist-Leninists. And, let's be frank, that's by design. Like, I mean, in culture, I remember, like, in culture, like, when I was younger, I would know about, like, the idea of, like, the Black radical, you know, the Black radical congressman, the Black radical, like, guy. There was, like, characters that would, like, dress in, like, I don't know, like, bomber jackets or whatever they're called, and then they'd, like, you know, be like, Black power, that kind of stuff. But you would never get an understanding of, like, their other ideology. It was just Black power and nothing else. MLK is a very prominent political figure in Black politics. Not a lot of people mention the fact that he was left-wing. Some of the earliest African-American, like, members of Congress after, like, during the Civil Rights Movement were some of the most radical members of Congress that you could really think of. Some of them bordered on, if not were, full-on socialists. That's not mentioned in a lot of their biographies, a lot of their explanations or stuff. Because the point is to remove that so that the next generation thinks that the best course of action is just a black politician will save the day. And we're seeing that to an extent with a current Senate race in Texas. Which leads to the next news story, which is very prominent in that regard. Because Jasmine Crockett, I don't really know, I guess I'm not really qualified to really make an assessment of that, but I think Jasmine Crockett is to an extent somewhat indicative of this idea. You see, Jasmine Crockett is perceived, like, everything about the race in this race is all about perception. Like, I'm seeing so many people who are saying so much about this race and the politicians involved in the race who have clearly done no research into any of these people prior, who have just had basic general vibes about all these people, and literally just super unequivocally just like, you guys clearly have no clue what you're talking about. And one of the biggest ones is just this weird argument about Jasmine Crockett and the far left, quote unquote. You see, a lot of people are basically rewriting history to claim that Jasmine Crockett was somehow a darling of the far left, that she was basically just like the Squad, and that all of them loved her up until she decided to run against James Tallarico, and all of a sudden, they don't like her anymore, trying to imply that it's again based on race. That it's just like, oh, well, clearly, this is the issue, when it's just like, that is unequivocally not true. Like, first of all, you guys don't know what far left is. The far left is the ones that say that AOC is an imperialist Zionist warhawk. So I think you're going to be a little confused when you see that they think that Jasmine Crockett is way worse than that. But even if you only want to go by, like, oh, the mainstream far left, even then that's not true. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but Jasmine Crockett wasn't even my first choice when she first ran for Congress. I backed a different candidate when they first ran. I only backed Crockett in the runoff, thinking, well, I mean, she can't be that bad. And then one of her first votes in Congress was against getting the troops out of Syria. So then I immediately went, okay, and then out of sight, out of mind, Jasmine Crockett was no longer on my radar anymore. And then she kept doing things that kept proving me right in that assessment. Particularly when I saw a lot of people starting to criticize her about her Gaza votes, and it's just like, yeah, she was already out of sight, out of mind for me. Like literally, it's like, I mean, especially newcomers, it's literally just like, you get one strike, you're out to me. Like, you're like one, like, I mean, if you're like, I mean, Ro Khanna does an occasional like oopsie doopsie vote, and it's just like, yeah, that kind of sucks, but he's grandfathered in. I'm kind of hooked on him at this point. But then you get Jasmine Crockett, it's just like newcomer, and like, and then it happens. Like, I mean, sometimes I'll see like a person who gets elected, and it's just like, oh, this person's not that bad, and they do one bad vote, and it's like, oops, sorry, you're out. Let me think of another person. I'm trying to think of another member of Congress that did happen, that this also happened with. I think it's Andrea Salinas is one. I guess technically Fetterman counts as one, but like, you get my point. Like, I mean, sometimes I'm a little bit too generous to people who probably I shouldn't be generous with. And again, like, it doesn't matter though. Like, it doesn't matter that her record is kind of like just not even that much of a it's like a normie dem. Like, she's like a normie dem, but like, people perceive her to be radical. People perceived her to be like some kind of radical. Like, again, like, this is all nonsense. Like, I mean, I'm like literally almost immediately where it's like people are like, oh, the Squad style progressive, like Jasmine Crockett. It's like, she's not Squad style. She's not a member of the Squad. She barely has anything remotely similar to her with the Squad, except for the fact that she's like a young woman of color. That's it. That's literally it. The only thing that is even remotely slightly indicative of like her being like somewhat perceived as like a radical is the fact that she is a loud anti-Trump voice. That's one of the big things that has kind of been like the thing for her. Like, oh, I am a vocal opponent to Trump. That was one of her main focuses of her campaign for Senate. Like, Trump doesn't like me because I'm willing to stand up to him. The problem is, she doesn't even have that anymore because of this next news story. So, for those who don't know, James Tallarico recently went on the Colbert show. Like, he went on Stephen Colbert's show. Stephen Colbert is, of course, going to be fired by CBS because they are controlled by Barry Weiss, who loves Donald Trump semen, and Colbert was going to have Tallarico on. And then Brennan Carr and the FCC basically said, no, you cannot do this interview. And again, this is after the FCC has already censored Colbert to the point where they're going to fire him. And after the FCC has tried to threaten multiple other people to do certain things in regards to controlling the media. You know, one of the main things about Project 2025, which is one of the main things that people have been, like, loudly oppositional to Donald Trump on. Like, opposing this is one of the easiest things that you could do. This is, like, very obvious. Like, Donald Trump is using the FCC to control the political narrative of his opponents. And anybody who is a fierce opponent of Donald Trump could see, like, no, this is, like, a bad thing, a terrible thing. We should absolutely stand against this in every sense of the word. Like, the fact that this is happening is just an unequivocal, obvious abuse of power, and we just have to handle this in any sense. We need to, like, oppose this. We need to, like, rally against this. We need to do anything in our power to stop this. Jasmine Crockett says that Donald Trump is right. Like, yes, the one thing that she's supposed to be, this hardcore anti-Donald Trump voice. And she literally says that Donald Trump is correct on this issue. No, fuck you. Fuck you. No. Instant disqualifier. Never run for office again. Terrible candidate. Go away. Like, you do not get to say that you are the anti-Trump candidate when you literally agree with Donald Trump using the FCC to silence political dissent. No, you do not get to do that. Not at all. And there's a reason why she does it, though. She doesn't care about Donald Trump. She doesn't care. She doesn't fucking care. Because she wants Donald Trump to be around. Because that way she can continue saying shit about him. She hates Tallarico more than she hates Donald Trump. And that's why they had that whole fake smear campaign where it's like, oh, James Tallarico called Colin Allred a mediocre candidate. How dare he? It's like, but he is. He's a mediocre candidate who lost. Yes. Colin Allred is a terrible candidate who lost. And so are you, Jasmine. You suck. You don't give a shit about anything. You have no issues. You don't care about anything. You're just there to do like a funny own against Republicans, and that's it. And that's why they're doing everything in their power to make sure you win the fucking race. Because they know they can beat you. You know they can beat you because you literally said it yourself. Hey, we're gonna lose anyway, so might as well pick me. This whole race, you've just been a self-centered fucking egotist. That's all this is. That's the thing. This is all this race is. Jasmine Crockett is just a fucking self-centered narcissist. And this is what I fucking hate. And she's hiding under the crux of, oh, I'm a black radical. You're not a black radical at all. And one of the big things that shows, it's like with the K-Hive. The K-Hive has literally been saying like, she's not Cori Bush. It's like, yeah, because Cori Bush has a fucking spine. And yeah, don't think I didn't notice a little bit of the shade thrown in this way, buckaroos. I've seen pictures of Cori Bush and Jasmine Crockett standing next to each other. Don't think I don't notice the colorism that you guys are doing. For those who don't know what the term colorism means, it is when people it's basically interracial racism, where some African Americans, it's most commonly exemplified in the African American community, but it is where lighter-skinned African Americans will look down upon darker-skinned African Americans because of, like, various other factors. Could that be perhaps why the K-Hive is centered around Kamala Harris out of all the black candidates in the world? Curious, isn't it? But anyways, let's move on to the last news story, which is just a small, interesting tidbit that I wanted to talk about, because it could possibly impact me. And it is a news story about how a flashbang explosive device was found near a North Carolina early voting site. So what ended up happening was, at a polling site in North Carolina, there was a small explosion that happened like 150 yards away. Nobody was injured, but everybody is already in 100% conclusion that this was very obviously a targeted attack against the polling station. And I know they haven't released any political motivations yet, but I think it's pretty obvious which side of the aisle this is attacking. Could it perhaps have something to do with the fact that people are trying to delegitimize the elections, both past and present? Interesting development. And, yeah, I just brought that up because, I just so happen to have not voted yet. So, yeah, keep that in mind. I have to make the trek to a polling place soon enough. It'll happen at some point this week. In fact, it might perhaps happen the day this episode comes out. I think, maybe. I'll have to figure that out. I mean, I don't know. I gotta do it, because I gotta make sure that my fucking like voter ID doesn't get tampered with or whatever. In what capacity? You gotta make sure. I've been checking my voter registration every day, trying to make sure. Don't throw me off the ballot. I have every reason to be on the ballot. I did check my voter ID, and I'm like, hopefully it does work, because I looked at the picture, and it's like, oh, I am disgusting and fat on it. Maybe it won't work anymore. That would be very nice to hear, oh, we can't verify this is you, honey, because you look so thin. It's like, well, that's nice, but that's not helpful. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it works. You can still tell it's me. You'll figure it out once I go to a polling place and, actually vote. But anyways, speaking of voting, let us move on to the main topic of this video. A very interesting development. So, yes, in this video, I'm going to list what political party I would support in every nation around the world. Kind of. Now, there are a lot of things I gotta say, before I get into this. One, I just gotta say this one thing. Depending on the country's system of politics, I probably wouldn't actually, be a member of a political party. If a country allows you to register as an independent, I probably would just register as an independent in basically every country around the world. Because registering as an independent, being free from being part of a political party and organization, is better. It allows you more freedom with your choices, and allows for a lot of other things, whatever. But also, a couple of things I need to say for the list proper. One, don't take this too seriously. Some of these decisions are more informed than others. If you know me, if you know this channel, if you know anything about this channel or at all, you'll know which countries are way more informed, and ones that are just, I looked at the wiki boxes, looked at the broad ideology of the party, and went, this one is good. There are some countries that literally did not have ideologies listed for the party, so I literally just went off basic vibes alone. And another thing that I need to say is, ideally, I would have loved to literally list every single country in the world, or every single, because there's one other aspect is, some places are, independent to some and not independent to others, but they have vastly different political systems from what is perceived to be their main country. So it's I kind of, added a little bit of those as well. Just because I added them to the list does not necessarily mean I support their independence movements. It just means there was another slot to fill. Again, if you know this channel, you know which ones I do support the independence of, I guess. I don't know if... Again, I don't know. I think... I don't know. But also, there are some places that I could not add to the list. One is de jure one-party states. I didn't add them because, again, is there really any point? Wow, shocker. If I was in Cuba, I'd support the Cuban Communist Party. Well, it might have been funny to add, oh, if I was in China, I'd support this party. And yeah, I probably could have done that, but, is there really a point? Is there really a point for me saying, oh, I would actually support this political party in North Korea? Really? Really? You could say, what's the point of you saying any of these at all? Fair point, yes. Then there are also some places that have sort of token opposition, like Belarus, where literally the opposition is just basically just basically just the same thing with a different face. I guess there are some of these guys that probably could have made it in by accident. I tried my best to look into a little bit more about the country's politics so I understand a bit about it, but again, couldn't really do much. And there are some places like Afghanistan and Burkina Faso who don't have any political parties due to the juntas, so I couldn't add them either. But then there's also a very rare section where there were a couple countries where I literally couldn't pick a party because I just couldn't. Like, one that is very big, I'll just mention this one as a very big obvious outlier that I didn't include, Nepal. I just couldn't think of any party to include for Nepal, because I'm about to do research into the Nepal political system, especially, like, literally, recently, Nepal just got a brand new, like, revamp of their political system. So I couldn't really do research on which parties were really viable or not. I guess maybe we'll find out the answer of that when I do the Nepal election video. And that's another thing, because it's like, there's a chance that in the time that because I was writing this one for a bit, there's a chance that in that time that I was writing it, and by the time this episode comes out, that the politics in these areas have kind of changed enough that really, the lists here are outdated. I know some of these ones might be outdated, but I don't care, I'm just gonna say them. And that's another thing. Some of these I'm going to expand upon why I chose them over others, or something along those lines. Some of them I might actually say one or two parties that might be good, and I might explain a little bit why I chose one of those two, or whatever. But for the most part, it's just going to be country, party, just for the lulz. Alright, here we go. First, we're going with Albania. And in that country, I would support the Together movement. In Algeria, I would support the Socialist Forces Front. In Andorra, I would support Concord. In Angola, I would support the People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola. In Antigua and Barbuda, I would support the United Progressive Party. In Argentina, I would support the Patria Grande Front. Specifically that one, not the full coalition, though granted that probably just means I support the coalition. In Armenia, I would support the Democratic Party of Armenia. In Australia, I would support the Green Party. In Austria, I would support the Gaza List Party. I don't even know if the Gaza List is still around, but the Gaza List is interesting to me because it was apparently founded on my birthday. So it seems that it was destiny or faith. In Bangladesh, I would support the Democratic United Front. In Barbados, I would support the Barbados Labour Party. In Belgium, I would support the Workers' Party of Belgium. In Belize, I would support the Belize People's Front. In Benin, I would support the Democrats. In Bhutan, I would support the Bhutan United Party. In Bolivia, I would support the Movement for Socialism. Morales has tried, but he's not going to end this movement quite yet. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, I would support the Social Democratic Party of Bosnia and Herzegovina. In Botswana, I would support the umbrella of democratic change. In Brazil, I would support the Workers' Party or Socialism and Liberty Party. Either of those two parties are fine. I guess I would be more ideologically aligned with the Socialism and Liberty Party, but the Workers' Party is pretty cool nonetheless. In Bulgaria, I would support the BSP and United Left reluctantly, because I try my best to try and find, I didn't want to include, socially conservative left-wing movements, because I don't like them. I think that social conservatism is a cringe, but there's some places where it's just, that's just literally the only option, so yeah. In Cambodia, I would support the Grassroots Democratic Party. In Cameroon, I would support the Social Democratic Front. In Canada, I would support the New Democratic Party. Hopefully Avi Lewis can get the party back on track. In Cape Verde, I would support the African Party for the Independence of Cape Verde. In the Central African Republic, I would support the Movement for the Liberation of the Central African People. In Chad, I would support Les Transformateurs. In Chile, I would back the Communist Party. In Colombia, I would back the Historic Pact. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, I would support the Union for Democracy and Social Progress. In the Republic of Congo, I would support the Pan-African Union for Social Democracy. In Costa Rica, I would support the Frente Amplio. In Croatia, I would support We Can. In Cyprus, I would support the Progressive Party of Working People. In the Czech Republic, I would support the Pirate Party. I'm surprised it took me this long to get to a pirate party, but the Czech Republic Pirate Party is actually pretty good. In Denmark, I would support the Green Left. But in the provinces that they own, in Greenland, I would support Inuit Ataqatigiit. In the Faroe Islands, I would support Republic. In Dominica, I would support the Dominica Labor Party. In the Dominican Republic, I would support People's Force. In Ecuador, I would support the Citizens' Revolution Movement. In Egypt, I would support Tagamu. In El Salvador, I would support the Farabundo Martí National Liberation Front. In Equatorial Guyana, I would support the Convergence for Social Democracy. In Estonia, I would support the Left Alliance of Estonia. In Ethiopia, I would support the Tigray People's Liberation Front. In Fiji, I would support the Fiji Labour Party. In Finland, I would support the Left Alliance. In France, I would support La France Insoumise, but in the provinces they own, I would support, in French Polynesia, Serve the People, in French Guyana, Pays Guyane, and New Caledonia, Kanak and Socialist National Liberation Front. In Gabon, I would support the Social Democratic Party. In Gambia, I would support the People's Democratic Organization for Independence and Socialism. In Georgia, I would support the Georgian Labour Party. In Germany, I would support Die Linke. In Ghana, I would support the National Democratic Congress. In Greece, I would support Mera 25. In Grenada, I would support the National Democratic Congress. In Guatemala, I would support the Movement for the Liberation of Peoples. In Guinea-Bissau, I would support the African Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde. In Guyana, I would support the People's Progressive Party. In Haiti, I would support Fanmi Lavalas. In Honduras, I would support Libre. In Hungary, I would support the Hungarian Socialist Party. In Iceland, I would support the Socialist Party or the Pirate Party. Both of these parties are relatively close to each other in the sense of like vote totals, and it's a little hard to pick one or the other. So I kind of just like, I'm just gonna struggle with them both. In India, I would support Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam, or I guess just that's just literally if I'm in that specific. That's basically what I'm saying is like that's the party I'm the most ideologically aligned with. But I know in India it's a lot more complicated than that. So on a national level, I'd probably just back the Communist Party. In Indonesia, I would support the Indonesian Democratic Party of Struggle. In Iran, I would support the Assembly of the Forces of Imam's Line. In Iraq, I would support the Iraqi Communist Party. In Ireland, I would support Sinn Féin. In Israel, I would support Hadash Ta'al, or, fingers crossed, the Joint List? In Italy, I would support the Greens and Left Alliance. In the Ivory Coast, I would support the Ivorian Popular Front. In Jamaica, I would support the People's National Party. In Japan, I would support Reiwa Shinsengumi or the Japanese Communist Party. Normally, I would have been all in on Reiwa Shinsengumi, even with the Communist Party winning, but at this point, Really, I think that the best course of action for the Japanese left would be for these two parties to come together and stop with their innate differences. In Kazakhstan, I would support Village, or known as Yeol, because this is another thing I gotta say. Some of these ones, I refer to them by the name in the country. Some of them, I'm referring to them by their translated names because I literally cannot say them. So if that confuses you, I apologize. I wanted to include pictures of like the party logos of every single party, but that's too much work. In Kenya, I would support the Orange Democratic Movement. In Kiribati, I would support the Bautokan Kiribati Moa Party. In Kosovo, I would support the Self-Determination Movement. In Kyrgyzstan, I would support the Social Democrats. In Latvia, I would support the Progressives. In Lebanon, I would support the Progressive Socialist Party. In Lesotho, I would support the Democratic Congress. In Liberia, I would support the Liberian People's Front. In Libya, I would support the National Front. In Liechtenstein, I would support the Free List. In Lithuania, I would support the Social Democratic Party of Lithuania. In Luxembourg, I would support the Left. In Madagascar, I would support the Malagasy Revolutionary Party. In Malawi, I would support the Alliance for Democracy. In Malaysia, I would support the Malaysian United Democratic Alliance. In Malta, I would support the Labour Party. In Mauritania, I would support Hope Mauritania. In Martirius, I would support the Alliance for Change. In Mexico, I would support the National Regeneration Movement, or Morena, probably the most well-researched position in this entire video. In Moldova, I would support the European Social Democratic Party. In Mongolia, I would support the Mongolian People's Party. In Montenegro, I would support the Social Democratic Party of Montenegro. In Morocco, I would support the Party of Progress and Socialism. In Mozambique, I would support the Optimist Party for the Development of Mozambique, Podemos. In Namibia, I would support the Landless People's Movement. In the Netherlands, I would support Green Left Labour. In the illegally occupied nations that they have, I would support the People's Electoral Movement in Aruba, and in Curaçao, I would support Partido Man. In New Zealand, I would support Te Pati Maori, but if I am very much not allowed to, I will support the New Zealand Green Party. In Nicaragua, I would support the Democratic Renewal Union, which at one point used to be called the Sandinista Renovation Movement. Basically the Sandinistas who hate Daniel Ortega. In Nigeria, I would support the Labour Party. In North Macedonia, I would support the Social Democratic Union of Macedonia. In Northern Cyprus, I would support Independence Path. In Norway, I would support the Socialist Left Party. In Pakistan, I would support the Pakistani People's Party. In Palestine, I would support the Palestinian National Initiative. And now comes the part where people call me cringe for supporting this party over any of the other parties in Palestine that are, around. Ignoring the fact that the Palestinian National Initiative is literally in an electoral alliance with the PFLP and the DFLP. Guys, chill, this video is not that deep. I just happen to think that of all the parties ideologically, this one kind of fits me the most. And again, this video is not that serious, keep that in mind. In Panama, I would support the Democratic Revolutionary Party. In Papua New Guinea, I would support the Social Democratic Party. In Paraguay, I would support the Guasu Front. In Peru, I would support Together for Peru. In the Philippines, I would support the Party of the Laboring Masses. In Poland, I would support Razem. In Portugal, I would support the Left Bloc. In Romania, I would support the Health Education Nature Disability Party. In Russia, I would back Yabloko. Now this one was kind of the toughest one to do for this video, because Russia really has no good options. basically all of their parties have been taken over by Putin. Jabloko seems to be the only party that currently is not run by Putin. And unfortunately, that's just like make it a standard liberal party. So, yeah, again, all of their so-called left-wing parties have basically been taken over by Putin. Like, for real, like, there's like 2 mainstream communist parties in Russia that are like literally just like lockstep in what Putin says. There was another one that was formed not that long ago that literally was accused by one of the other ones as being just a creation of the Kremlin. But there was one party that almost sounded cool, and then I looked into it, and it's like, for some reason, I guess they say for some reason, but nowadays, their members, like their one member of the Duma, literally is just like a massive, even though they literally started their own creation as like a movement against Putin and his radicalization on stuff like Ukraine, now they're just lockstep in support of his Ukraine motion. Jabloko was basically the only party that did 2 things. 1, support the LGBTQ people in Russia, and 2, loudly oppose the Ukraine war. There was a left-wing politician in Russia that used to do that too, but he was kicked out of Russia. He can't be in Russia no more. And his party's run by ops now. Anyways, now on to Rwanda. I would back the Democratic Green Party of Rwanda. In St. Kitts and Nevis, I would support Labour. In St. Lucia, I would support the St. Lucia Labour Party. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I would support the Unity Labour Party. In Samoa, I would support the Samoa Labour Party. In San Marino, I would support the Rete movement. In Sao Tome and Principe, I would support the Movement for Liberation of Sao Tome and Principe Social Democratic Party. In Senegal, I would back PASTEF. In Serbia, I would back the Green Left Front. In Seychelles, I would support United Seychelles. In Sierra Leone, I would support the All People's Congress. In Singapore, I would support the Workers' Party. In Slovakia, I would support the Pirate Party. In Slovenia, I would support Levica. In the Solomon Islands, I would support the Green Party Solomon Islands. In Somalia, I would support the Wadajir Party. In Somaliland, I would support the Comier Peace, Unity, and Development Party. In South Africa, I would back the African National Congress. Some of you guys might say cringe, but I don't care. ANC for life. In South Korea, I would support the Progressive Party, but maybe also just the Democratic Party, because that's a little bit complicated. The Democratic Party is technically run by the left-wing populist Lee Jae-myung right now, but ideologically I align more with the South Korean Progressive Party. But then again, the South Korean Progressive Party basically joined an alliance with the Democratic Party, so yeah, I guess broadly Progressive Party wins. In South Ossetia, I would support the Communist Party of South Ossetia. In South Sudan, I would support the Sudan People's Liberation Movement in opposition. In Sri Lanka, I would support the National People's Power. In Suriname, I would back the National Democratic Party, at least somewhat reluctantly. In Sweden, I would back the Left Party. In Switzerland, I would back the Swiss Party of Labour. In Taiwan, I would back the New Power Party. In Tajikistan, I would back the Socialist Party of Tajikistan. In Tanzania, I would support the Alliance for Change and Transparency. In Thailand, I would support the People's Party. In Timor-Leste, I would support Fretilin. In Togo, I would support the National Alliance for Change. In Trinidad and Tobago, I would support the Patriotic Front. In Tunisia, I would support the People's Movement. And in Turkey, I would support the People's Equality and Democratic Party. In Uganda, I would support the National Unity Platform. In Ukraine, I would support the Radical Party of Ole Lyashko. In the United States of America, even though I am a registered independent, I guess I'll technically put DSA. It's not an actual political party, but it's the one I'm a member of, so yeah. In Puerto Rico, I would support the Citizens Victory Movement. Easy choice. Maybe the Puerto Rican Independence Parties might have a decent second choice, but Citizens Victory Movement is the one that seems the most viable. And in the Virgin Islands, I would support the Independent Citizens Movement just for the lulz. Next is the United Kingdom, a thing that forces multiple countries into one major country. So we're going to go through all of them. In England, as of now, I would say I support your party for the time being. We have to wait and see how this goes, but I'm, for the short term, going to be like, yeah, I think your party is the best choice. In Wales, I would back Plaid Cymru. In Scotland, I would back the Scottish National Party. In Northern Ireland, I would back Sinn Féin. In Gibraltar, I would support the Gibraltar Socialist Labour Party. In Antigua, I would support the Antigua Progressive Movement. In the Cayman Islands, I would support the Caymanian Community Party. In the Isle of Man, I would support Mec Vannin. In Montserrat, I would back the People's Democratic Movement. In the British Virgin Islands, I would back the Progressive Virgin Islands Movement. In Uruguay, I would back the Frente Amplio. In Uzbekistan, I would support the Ecological Party of Uzbekistan. In Vanuatu, I would support the My Land Party. In Venezuela, I would support the Venezuelan Communist Party. In Yemen, I would support the Yemeni Socialist Party. In Zambia, I would support the Socialist Party. And last, but certainly not least, in Zimbabwe, I would support the Movement for Democratic Change, Tsvangirai. And that is the list of all the political parties that I would support had I been born in any other nation around the world. I mean, not really. If I were born in any of the other nations around the world, the politics of these nations would have, of course, shifted my perspective on a lot of things. And of course, none of these parties really 100% represent me. I mean, like, literally, I'm just thinking of it right now. The Iranian one, literally, it is explicitly a Shia Islamist party, but it's a left-wing one. So, again, this video was mainly for the lulz, a 400th special. Would have been, this is something. Hopefully this makes at least somewhat more sense than those, Twitter accounts from, election Twitter that, will post parties where it'll be they support, a communist party in one section and then support, a fascist party in another country. Anyways, feel free to leave parties in the comments section below. I think it would be better for you guys if you try to pick parties of countries that you probably actually know a bit about the politics of. Because again, some of these countries are way more informed than the others. Anyways, thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click the bell to notify when a future video of mine comes out. And if you're into more content from me, consider supporting me on Patreon.